Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is Bloomberg Businessweek, insight from the reporters and editors that bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Businessweek with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
It is Bloomberg Businessweek. I'm taking a look at shares of Ford down 6% as we speak. The company reported fourth quarter adjusted earnings per share at 39 cents. The estimate was for 32 cents. The company, though, seeing 2025 adjusted EBIT $7 billion to $8.5 billion. The estimate, Carol, was for $8.57 billion.
Just want to point out our Keith Naughton out with a story on the Bloomberg saying Ford warning that profit may fall by $2 billion or more this year due to an expected drop in vehicle prices and costly new model launches. Company's earnings before interest and taxes will fall to a range of $7 billion to $8.5 billion, down from that $10.2 billion profit it generated back in 2024, just last year. Keep in mind, Ford lost a record $5.1 billion on EVs last year and predicts the deficit could widen to as much as $5.5 billion this year. So that's a bit of your backdrop and explains why we are seeing Ford shares dip in a big way here in the aftermarket. Tim, the stock right now, it is down about 5%.
There's also those concerns about tariffs and the question about what the tariffs will do for companies, including the big three, Ford, Stellantis, and GM. GM, at least by one measure, the most exposed to tariffs on Canada and Mexico. We know, though, that those tariffs have been put off for at least till the end of this month.
All right, so let's see, get a little bit more on Ford in particular. With us right now is Rebecca Lindland. She's Managing Director Automotive at the consultancy Allison Worldwide. Rebecca, you have been following the auto industry for a long, long time, and I know maybe you're not going to rip apart the balance sheet here, but let's talk about where Ford is and based on what you just heard about their latest financial update.
Yes, Carol, thank you so much for having me on. As you know, I'm not a stock analyst. So what I really look at and focus in on is consumer behavior and consumer acceptance when it comes to electric vehicles in particular. And one of our sister agencies here at both Allison Worldwide and Stagwell overall is Harris Polls. So I pulled in some information, and what was really interesting to me is that only 26% of people that we polled actually said that the federal tax credit would be a top 5 reason for why they would consider an EV. So we're finding that what consumers really gravitate towards is the fact that we still need charging infrastructure in order to make them feel more comfortable buying an EV. And this really impacts all of those plans that you both were just discussing. What is that it's a really big challenge.
What does that infrastructure look like? Like what it doesn't look like gas stations, because we know that because
right.
a lot of the charging can occur at home. We know that. So it's not like, a gas station or an EV charger on every corner like there is with gas stations. What does the infrastructure look like to make people comfortable?
Yes, it's a great question, Tim. So what's interesting when you think about it, actually, if you look at level 3 chargers, which are the most expensive, that's what makes up the Tesla supercharger network and such, those actually, most modern vehicles, most new EVs coming out today, they can charge in about 20 to 25 minutes if you have a level 3 charger. So I actually did a little experiment when I drove from Los Angeles to Las Vegas for CES. I thought, let me try and see how long would I be inside to use the restroom, get a cup of coffee, and get back to my car. And it actually took me about 15 to 18 minutes to do all those things. And so when you're charging, when you're at a rest stop, if we have the proper infrastructure, we could actually put chargers in some of those gas stations and some of those locations. The ideal really is that you're charging at home, at least for right now.
Well, I want to just go back to, here we are watching Ford sell off big time in the aftermarket. And I don't think we were surprised necessarily completely, but I do wonder, what's the way forward? China is moving way ahead on EVs. And, I do wonder if the American companies, Rebecca, take a back seat because the American market and American demand isn't there, because maybe the infrastructure isn't there, and there are still some concerns. The costs of EVs have been so expensive in the United States. I mean, certainly government policies and subsidies have helped that out. But, what does it mean for Ford and GM and Stellantis in terms of their role in the global auto market if they are pulling back on EVs because they kind of have to?
Well, keep in mind that all the technology is there, though, Carol. So they have developed these vehicles that they could sell in other parts of the world. So they could continue to make internal combustion engines and hybrids. Let's not forget hybrids. Hybrids have been around for as long as I have and longer. And yet consumers are just now seeing them and saying, you know what, that's actually a really good solution. And by some reports, we've actually seen hybrid sales are a bit of a rejection of going full EV,
right?
Because you can charge at home and you can charge. But at the end of the day, really, this is about convenience. Consumers will adopt technology that is more convenient. And right now, without supporting infrastructure, an electric vehicle simply is not as convenient as an internal combustion engine.
I mean, if you were sitting down with the Ford CEO, and actually we're going to hear from the Ford CEO, Mr. Farley, in just a moment across our Bloomberg platforms. Jim Farley is going to join us. I mean, what would be the number one question that you would want to talk to him, or number one or number two, in terms of his business and Ford's role in the global auto market?
I would advise both Jim and Mary Barra and anyone else who would be willing to listen that this is about consumer choice, that we as a nation in the US right now, we really don't have the infrastructure to support a full migration to electric vehicles. It is about providing consumers with a choice, with the most fuel efficient version of what they want to buy. And that's one of the things that we need to focus on. We are really not in a position to have a full EV, and we don't need to have full gas anymore, because we do have fantastic electric vehicles that are out there with the type of range, 300 to 400 miles, just like your internal combustion engine, but it really gets back to charging. That's the number one challenge that we have.
So what about e-revs? We've been talking about these with Keith Naughton. These are sort of plug-in hybrid electric, but with super long range. I mean, we're talking hundreds of miles here. What's the future of those?
Yeah, the extended range, right, electric vehicles.
Sure. I mean, obviously, it gets back to charging. So it doesn't really matter. Like, even if you have a hybrid that is both battery and electric, you still have to, in order to maximize the ownership benefits, you still need to charge it. So it's really, it's a simple but incredibly complicated answer. So it is about making an electric vehicle, whether it's extended range, whether it's short range, it is about making them more convenient and providing an opportunity to charge. I call it, a lot of consumers are looking at this as the perception of the exception, where people consider an EV. They say, yes, but once a year I drive to grandma's house and I don't know where I would charge on the way. Right. And so instead of sitting there and thinking, every day, or maybe 2 days a week or 3 days a week, I go into the office, I drive 35 miles a day, I can actually charge almost once a week. That's the type of conversations that we need to have, instead of looking and saying, yes, but I go to grandma's house once a year for Thanksgiving or something.
All right, we got to run. Hey, Rebecca, thanks so much. Rebecca Lindland, Managing Director, Automotive at Allison Worldwide, talking with us about the auto sector. And we do so because we are watching shares of Ford here in the aftermarket. Folks, they are down just shy of 5% here. And this, as the company sees a sharp profit drop. And they're talking to and addressing, the possibility of tariffs and the impact, not the possibility, but the reality, perhaps, and the impact it could have on their business, certainly on the cost side of things.
Yeah, that's right. Ford warning that profit may fall by $2 billion or more this year on an expected drop in vehicle prices and costly new model launches, adding to risks posed by potential steep new tariffs under President Donald Trump and dimming electric vehicle prospects.
Yeah, the second largest U.S. automaker, just saying that earnings before interest and taxes will fall to a range of $7 billion and $8.5 billion. That's down from the $10.2 billion profit that it generated last year. So once again, you've got the CFO telling reporters that earnings will drop this year due to industry-wide prices falling by about 2%. And that cost of launching the new Lincoln Navigator and Ford Expedition SUV, which will result in a break-even first quarter. So Ford shares are down.
They're also just about 2.5 weeks into a leadership transition in Washington. We see some shakeup in C-suites. Match Group named Zillow co-founder Spencer Raskoff as its new CEO, replacing Bernard Kim. But as we all know, not all leaders are CEOs or presidents, Carol, and that's where Paula Davis comes in. She's founder and CEO of the Stress and Resilience Institute. She's got a new book out. It's called Lead Well, 5 Mindsets to Engage, Retain, and Inspire Your Team. She joins us this afternoon. Paula, good to have you with us. You wrote a book a few years ago about stress and burnout, and we spoke to you back then. What is the relationship between stress, burnout, and leadership?
Thank you both so much. I'm so glad to be back on. So a lot of a lot of the material for this new book really came from my work in the last probably 4 to 5 years or so since my first book has come out, really looking at burnout in a different way. So taking a look at the systemic or root causes of it. And when I started to dig into that with leaders and teams, I realized that a lot of the result was stuff that needed to be focused on or was really under more of the purview of leaders. And so I realized what those themes were and just kind of turned them into the mindsets for the book.
You know, I do wonder with, what has been coming out of the government in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, a rollback there. And we increasingly see companies saying that they're ending their efforts or, not going to be maybe as visible when it comes to them. In general, in terms of like inspiring your team and thinking about your team, is there a whole rollback that's going on in corporate America, or do you see differently?
So I think that certainly DEI is going through, if not certainly a rebrand, I would say at the very least. And I think that, one of the easiest ways for leaders to, I think, help with how do I deal with the fallout from that with just in terms of how my folks are feeling, is with one of the mindsets that I talk about, which is kind of upping your game in the sticky recognition and mattering component. And so that's a mindset that I oftentimes will encourage leaders to start with, which really just entails really making sure you're being very clear, letting people know the evidence of their impact and the impact that they're making and the impact that their work is having on your clients or your business units or whatever, the outcome is, because it activates something really powerful called mattering. So really that combination of knowing we're achieving something, but also that we're feeling recognized for that. That's a big deal.
I opened this by talking about leadership. And, I think when people think of leadership, they always think of managers or people in positions of power. But this book also covers like ways you can engage yourself, even if you're not a manager, ways you can apply yourself, ways you can take a self-assessment to sort of understand where you're going. Talk a little bit about who this is for.
Yes. So, the core audience really is for leaders or managers at any level. And I don't think you have to be in the C-suite. I know you don't have to be in the C-suite to take advantage of what this is about. So if you are new to your role, if you are new to a leadership position, if you haven't been leading all that long, really at the end of the day, leadership is just a set of behaviors that you use to get your team and other people in your purview where you want to go all together. And so there's definitely that focus. But yeah, I did definitely want to sprinkle in, some bits and pieces for people as well who, just kind of want to flex their muscles in a way that's going to help them feel a little bit more inspired and engaged.
Does AI make this all harder, Paula, especially when I think workers are saying, well, wait a minute, I'm kind of concerned that advanced artificial intelligence is going to take my job or take parts of my job?
I think it makes it more stressful, but I also think that this notion, part of the message that I want to get across in the book is that now is the time for kind of these concepts of human sustainability and human-centered practices and human-centered leadership. So the more tech-focused and techy we're going to get and continue to get into the future, the more it's going to really demand or mandate that we also really up our game on some of these human practices as well, because they're going to have to coexist. AI is certainly going to, continue to influence influence the landscape of our work. But humans are always going to, I hope, be part of the work equation. And so, clients and people still want to deal with other people. And so we got to figure out how to make that happen.
How does that work though in an AI world? I mean, do we have AI ever replacing managers in your view?
That's really interesting. So I think there will be things that AI is going to be always really tough to replicate. Like, I think it's going to be hard for AI to replicate curiosity, good communication skills, good teamwork. It can enhance maybe perhaps some of those efforts. And when you think about some of the psychology too, when we talk about resilience and when we talk about values and meaning, those are going to be things, and certainly already, I mean, you look at Gen Z and some younger millennials and really honestly, all of us really want that sense of values alignment and meaning in our work. And I think that AI and technology is going to have a hard time replicating some of those human attributes.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? And how this dynamic, plays into it. Just got about 30 seconds here. Do you feel like most leaders get it right, or there's a lot to be learned?
I think most leaders are trying. I think they're trying really hard. I think they don't have a language. I think they don't know where to start. And this is such a complex and challenging time to lead that they really need concrete skills and a roadmap. And that's really the void that I'm seeking to fill.
If leaders could change one thing and just that would kind of listen to you, what thing could they change that would make them maybe better leaderships along the lines of what you've been talking about?
Yeah, I think that going back to the notion of, making sure that people see very clearly that they're making an impact and how they're making an impact, simply just noticing other people, telling people how you rely on them, and kind of focusing on those basic first step human skills is critical.
Paula Davis, the book is Lead Well. Thank you so much.
Well, Christina Stembel often joins us during big months for the flower industry. Think Mother's Day and yes, Valentine's Day, which is coming in just over a week. Carol Massar.
Warning everybody.
We don't need the excuse of a holiday, though, to talk to her, because we love it when she joins us, especially when she's here in New York from the West Coast. Christina is founder and CEO of Farmgirl Flowers. It's a company that she bootstrapped into a $35 million business. She joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me back. I love being here.
It's great to have you.
How's business?
Business is good. I mean, we're in our second busiest time of year. Thank you for the reminder. We're about a little over a week out, so please, everyone, get your orders in. But we're holding steady. It's exactly where we thought we'd be.
How much comes in last minute? I am such a last minute girl, so tell me how much comes in last. And how do you manage a business for that?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, we put orders in months and sometimes up to a year in advance for some products, some of our materials. So we just, it's a wing and a prayer a little bit. It's good projections too. So, it's hard. But within the week before, probably about 70% of the orders will come in.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So a lot are coming in right now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We got to go to tariffs and talk a little bit about where the flowers come from and how you're looking at the environment, given what we heard from the president a little earlier this week. Yes, Mexico and Canada, those are on pause right now. Where do the flowers come from, and how do you think about tariffs?
Yeah, so most of the flowers that everyone purchases in the United States come from South America. So Colombia was the first one that put everybody on edge in the floral industry. It would have been too late to really impact Valentine's Day numbers, but by Mother's Day, our prices would increase dramatically with Colombia. So that's on pause right now as well, which is really wonderful. Canada and Mexico, differently. So Mexico is going to impact us all as well. About 80% of all the flowers that are sold in the United States come from other countries. Ours is less. We're about 55 to 60% domestic right now. But that's going to increase. Our domestic production is going to be increased because everyone's going to be fighting for it because they're not going to be able to get the same prices elsewhere.
You think, how much, in anticipation of this impacting, how much does it, when do people start to change in terms of growing more here in the United States? How much more can you grow in the United States? Because you're competing for land against everything else. So I'm just curious, how quickly can the model change from importing to having it grown domestically?
I don't even know if it's possible to change it. I mean, following, the CEO of Ford, I feel very similarly to him. We don't have the infrastructure here. There's not a lot of succession planning in farming in general, in agriculture of any kind. Flowers are the same way. So, the land has been sold. The grandfathers that started farms, their grandchildren have already sold a lot of the farmland. Almost everything that was, I shouldn't say everything, but a large percentage of what was grown in California, which is the largest growing state in the United States, is now in Baja, Mexico. Mexico. So they call it Baja California. We know that's not true. So the tariffs are going to, definitely impact that. And there's not the land, also the labor. I mean, there's not, for agriculture jobs, there's not the labor availability. The infrastructure costs too much, the insurance, people aren't going to spend $300 on a bouquet. And, in order to turn around the ship, it's going to require American consumers to be willing to spend a lot more on sending a gift. And that isn't probably going to happen. So it's scary to think about all those things.
So if we were to see tariffs go into effect on Mexico, and, if obviously the president has used this as a way to negotiate, at least he did that with Colombia a few weeks ago, where would the prices increase? You said it would increase for you. You would have to pass those along to the consumer. You would not be able to absorb those.
The floral industry is notoriously low margin. Yeah. I'm very proud of the single-digit profit margins that we have at Farmgirl Flowers. They are hard fought for that. We work a lot of hours. We work really hard for that, single digits. The largest companies in our industry that are, public companies, so you can go look at their earnings, have single-digit profits when they have profits. So there's no way for us not to pass it on to consumers. We're already subsidizing shipping by a large percentage. Now if we have to subsidize our gross margins are tiny compared to almost every other industry. I joke a lot. I have with you guys before. I wish we sold sweaters, right? We don't. So,
or perfume.
Yeah, exactly. Perfume. Something with like a very large, mascara.
Have you considered developing NVIDIA chips?
Exactly. Well, so it's all going to have to be passed on. We are, because we have that little bit of profit that we've focused on in the last 2 years, we're able to supplement it a small amount, like the CEO Ford said, like he has a couple weeks, like we can supplement it a bit, but not,
It's also not like you guys can buy ahead and stockpile it in warehouses, right? There, flowers just last just a certain amount of time.
5 days. We have 5 days.
You have five
so,
days. Yes. It's wild. I do wonder about this whole idea of globalization that has happened over the last couple of decades, right? In global supply chains. And then we feel like we've talked a lot about nearshoring and onshoring. It sounds like for the flower industry, it's not even like financially, it won't work, even if we do it. Or it might not even be doable because there might not be the land or farming to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, when we first started talking, we had a large, it was pre-COVID, we had a large manufacturing facility in San Francisco. So 40,000 square feet, we had 300 team members there. And we were losing our shirts. I'll just say that we were just breaking even enough to pay paychecks with that. We can't even do it not growing the flowers, just designing them into bouquets at that scale. There's not enough workers. And with, Costco just raising the minimum wage to $32, which is wonderful, we wouldn't have that ability to. So we're trying to all compete with a workforce, an hourly workforce that we can't. So there's just so many reasons why this is going to have a ripple effect much greater than what most consumers would think.
So what do you do for assembly now?
We have a very diversified model. So we use farm partners that we teach them how to design them and ship them out. We have bouquet production facilities. Yeah. We have very little owned ourselves. It's been smarter for us to do it that way. So
you've essentially outsourced the design or assemblage of the bouquets?
Yes, we do it different than our competitors in a way that we control the design aspect of it. And so that way we can keep our quality where we need it to be. But it's not how it used to be pre-COVID.
So when you say you've outsourced it to farmers, so if it comes from South America on a plane, it's already in a bouquet?
Yes. Now, most of ours are with U.S. farmers, but we do have some in Colombia. We have one in Ecuador. So we do have facilities elsewhere. Some of them are designed there. Some of them are shipped raw materials to other facilities in the U.S. We diversified to get closer to the end consumer to help with our shipping costs that were killing us before when we first started talking as well. Yeah. In order to be able to compete with lower price points that we need to have to compete with our competitive set.
Is it getting easier or harder to do this? How long have you been doing this now?
14. This is our 15th year.
I thought it was 15. Yeah. So, and it's you who has been doing it. So I'm just curious, as a small business owner who has seen pandemics and you name it, like some really incredible things kind of test your ability to keep it going. Like, is it an easier business environment? And I'm curious too what you're anticipating from the new administration in terms of small business policy, if at all.
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about this administration and what it's going to mean for us as a company.
Why?
Because
of tariffs and things.
And the uncertainty. Like I've gotten used to, the easier part has been I've gotten used to more uncertainty. I understand now that there is should be a line item in my budget every year, which there is now for unplanned expenses, things I didn't understand before. And I think my mindset shifting from, growth at all costs to profitability has helped us tremendously. But I had to sacrifice something for that. I wanted the Silicon Valley dream. I wanted to build a company. I wanted to be the, cover of Entrepreneur magazine. I wanted all those things. And that now I have a very different reality. And I'm happy with that reality. I'm happy that I can provide good jobs that are more stable. But the level of uncertainty with things I can't control right now, definitely keeps me up at night.
So is it easier in general?
I think because it's easier because of the education that I've received from doing it. Yeah. If it's harder, it's definitely more complex, but because I'm wiser now, it's a bit easier, I guess.
Yeah.
You bootstrap the company, so you don't have the same pressure that a lot of startups, and I'm not even considering you a startup because you've been around for 15 years at this point, that small businesses have after they raise outside funding, and that's for an exit. Last time we spoke with you, you said you were in this for the long haul. I'm sure there are companies that come by who want to acquire you. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually used to think this was my biggest curse. I actually owned the unfundable ChristinaStembel.com, by the way, and the unfundable. I used to think I would complain about it, to you both. I would complain constantly and be like, nobody will give me any money. Like, do I not look trustworthy? Look at our numbers. And now I think it's the greatest gift because I see all of my friends that have, startups or not startups anymore, but have, board meetings every 3 months that they are just in so much pain about, and everybody is expecting them to work miracles in an economy that's not, it's not possible, Right. And, right now I'm just, really happy that it happened. I think it's a big gift I was given, and how I'm looking at it for the long run now is, doing some smart strategic things that I think will help us in 5 to 10 years, not thinking about the next quarter, not thinking even this year, like, it's a building year for us. We'll comp last year and have the same, single digits profit, hopefully. But that single digit profit is allowing us to do things like lock down some supply chain. We're vertically integrating. We're growing some flowers for the first time. We're doing things like that that I think will help us 5 to 10 years from now.
Where do you think you will be in 5 to 10 years?
Hopefully still here talking to you both.
We hope so too.
That's my dream. And, hopefully, we'll do sustainable growth. So we'll be bigger 5 to 10 years from now, but we'll have done it the right way, in a way that we could be here 50 years if we wanted to.
Yeah. When you say sustainable growth, you're talking about financial sustainable growth. But
I
also am curious about the impact on the environment and how your approach and stuff like that can be challenging.
Absolutely can be challenging. It's always weighing what's the best thing we can do in our opinion, right? Like, we're very careful not to call ourselves like an eco, we get this title a lot and we're always like, no, don't, like, there's nothing sustainable about flowers. Really, there's lots of transportation back and forth, inbound, outbound. They bring joy to people's lives and we love that, but we do the best we can. We always make the right decision, even if it impacts the bottom line in a negative way for us. We spend more money to do it the right way, but we don't ever tout our environmental consciousness.
How has what people want changed? Like, how has what you offer changed due to changing consumer taste? I was talking to somebody who's way younger than I am, and she just got engaged. She has a huge diamond, and it's a lab-grown diamond. And she was saying, all my friends who are getting engaged right now are getting these lab-grown diamonds, and we're seeing that kill the diamond industry and kill some of these retailers out there. Is that happening with flowers? Like, are there changing consumer tastes for younger people?
I don't think it's taste, really. It is price points, though.
Yeah.
What consumers will spend. I mean, Valentine's Day is the only exception to this rule. People are looking for deals right now. People are looking for a good value. So that does, I'm still head of product. I make every bouquet you see on our site.
Wow. And
when we're doing it, we are, always weighing, like, we need to keep our AOV, our average order value, up, as high as possible, but we need to not, right now we have kind of a gap in the good customer. We have better and best, but we're working on creating a better, offering for the good customer that is more price sensitive, especially going into next year. I think it's going to be even more and more necessary. And also people are looking to feel like they got a deal. So discount codes, we used to be like we're like, we give you the best deal we can. And now we're like, okay, here's a discount code, here's a free ship shop. So it looks like you're getting free shipping, but shipping costs a lot of money. So it's not free shipping.
I heard there's no such thing as free shipping.
Nothing. There's no such thing as free shipping. So
I feel like Shark Tank, what's your customer acquisition cost? Like, is it expensive, or do you find like most of your customer base, they're repeat buyers and so on and so forth? Like, give us an idea.
Yeah, so about half are repeat and half are not.
Okay.
We do not exceed $25 in customer acquisition cost.
Okay.
Because we can't.
Right.
So that's why we're smaller than we want to be right now. But we're doing that because if we go over that, we know that we are paying more money than we can afford to be financially healthy. So we just cut it off there.
Are you using AI at all?
A little bit. So
How?
not in the best. I mean, we use it a little bit.
We're picking everybody's brains because we're not using it as probably, and everybody's like, you should be. And we're like, all right, so how are you doing it?
I mean, I use it a lot personally for writing.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have it. It knows my tone now. Like every job description, I have it writing for me now, and the tone that everything is. So I use it a lot personally for that. In emails as well. I'm always like, take out the emotion in this email or things like that. So I use it a lot for that personally. And it helps from business, because I can get my soapbox out and stuff I need to not sometimes. So I use it for that. We use it a little bit in customer service. There's even like with the platform we use, there's a make it nicer button that, that uses AI to make our, after customer service, if they're getting hit with a snowstorm,
So you have a button, you get it, like when you're sending an email to a customer, you have a button you press that says make it nicer?
Make it nicer.
Wow.
Thank you, Gladly.
Is it in an LLM?
It's Gladly, which is a software program for customer service, which we love. And all of our team was in customer service last Mother's Day when we had a big snowstorm, or Valentine's Day, and we had a big delay because of that. And we were all like, at the end of the day, make it nicer, because it gets hard. Yeah.
So what's hard about running a small business right now?
Yeah, I think
if you need funding, can you get it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can only get it when you don't need it. I mean,
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, do you so how do you manage, I don't know, what's the economic backdrop that you think about for the United States right now? As you said, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot coming at us. I mean, I'm just curious, how are you managing for, what kind of a consumer that's going to constantly look for a value? Give us an idea.
I think marketing is actually the hardest thing by far. Getting traffic to your site in an affordable way, cutting through all the noise. I mean, you see your inbox. People are sending emails. Some companies are getting 3 a day from.
It's annoying.
Yeah, it is, right? I'm one of those people that's once a day. I'm sorry. We won't go more than that. But, it's trying to cut through that noise with, like I said, our customer acquisition costs. If we could spend $60 or $70, but why would we for $104 AOV? That doesn't make any sense. And a 1.7 to 2.2 LTV, we know how it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. So I think the hardest thing is trying to figure out creative ways with limited team members, because you also have to run really lean right now. So you don't have a ton of team members to be able to do lots more partnerships or things like that will actually help you with the customer acquisition cost.
Have you had a chance while you've been in New York City to see any of the bodega flower displays?
No, I have not.
How do they do this? Because it's such a low margin business, but you can still get bouquets of flowers
the delis.
at the
I always
delis.
come to delis. Yeah.
How do they do that?
They're all imported. Yeah.
Okay.
They're imported from, and the flower types that are there are ones that will hold up for a very long time. So if I'm going to use button chrysanthemums, those can be outside of that deli or bodega, for, you can buy it for $20 and it can sit there for 3 weeks. A David Austin Rose, you can't. A David Austin Rose is going to cost you $2 at wholesale, $1.50 to $2 at wholesale price, which means it's going to cost you $6 for that David Austin Rose. And you have about 3 days. So it's a type of flowers they use. It's where it's coming from. It's the colors that a lot of people don't. If we like peaches and pinks and things like that, you're going to get bright purples and bright yellows and things like that are the kind of the leftovers people don't want. They cut deals to them.
It's not always the greatest colors. There's a lot of carnations.
A lot of carnations.
Noted.
Just going to say.
Noted.
No, it's interesting to hear, though, what the wholesale prices of a great rose or something is, because you realize when you're doing a bouquet and you're like, oh my God, but you realize that your cost is expensive.
Really expensive. I mean, King Proteas are my favorite flowers, and we get them for about $7.
Which one?
King Proteas. You've seen them? They're awesome. They're from Australia, New Zealand area, South Africa. We have a lot of buying power, but if you were smaller, it'd be $12 to $15 per stem. So I mean, if you're going to a local flower shop, it's going to cost you $45 a stem for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Better get on it.
I know. I know where to go.
You do know where to go.
Do know where to go.
Totally. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good luck with Valentine's Day.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then comes Mother's Day. Christina Stembel, she's founder and CEO of Farmgirl Flowers. Really, truly one of our favorite interviews. So glad you find time for us.